Next airplane we're going to talk about is near and dear to my heart. This is an F-111F Aardvark. What makes this airplane near and dear to my heart is I've flown this airplane. When I was a commander of the 493rd Squadron there at RAF, stationed at RAF Lake and Heath, England, I flew this airplane. I flew it twice. Once for 2.8 hours and the second time for 2.5 hours. I don't know where I went, what I did, who I flew with, but it's in my logbook that I flew this airplane. I have about 3,000 hours in 111s, just shy of that, but this airplane I've flown twice. Some airplanes in your squadron you fly 6, 8, 10 times. Some airplanes you don't fly any, it's just whatever maintenance puts in the line item, the line that you're flying, and so that's the one you fly. We wanted to get an F-111F to tell my story. I was born in Franklin, a little town just south of here, but my family moved to Bowling Green when I was just a youngster, and I graduated from Bowling Green High, graduated from Western. Always wanted to be a fighter pilot. When I was this size, small, my buds wanted to be Major League Baseball players or firemen or whatever. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So when I graduated from Western, within a couple of months, I joined the Air Force. I went to officers training school, became a second lieutenant. Then I went to pilot training and graduated from pilot training. And my first assignment was to the Mecca for fighter pilots in the United States Air Force, Nellis Air Force Base. So I went to Nellis and I was a pilot for F-111As, a different model of this. But I did that for a few years. And then I went to Southeast Asia as a forward air controller, FAC. But they needed French-speaking FACs in Southeast Asia. I didn't speak French, so I went to French school for about 6, 7 months before I went to Southeast Asia. And then I got checked out in the OV-10, and I went to Southeast Asia. First time I was assigned at Ubon, Thailand, and I flew primarily over Cambodia. This is when we weren't in Cambodia, but I flew as a forward air controller there. The Cambodians spoke French as their second language, which is why I had to speak French so I could communicate with them. But I did that for just a couple of 3 months, and then they needed some pilots, FACs, up at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, to fly over the trail, over Laos, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so for the last 6 or 7 months of my tour, well, that's what I did. I flew as a forward air controller. Exciting mission. I really enjoyed it. Finished my tour there. I went back to Nellis, got recurrent in the F-111A, and my squadron turned around and deployed back to Southeast Asia. So back I went, and I served another tour flying F-111As. Once I finished that, I went back to Nellis, checking out as an instructor pilot when I got selected to go to graduate school at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Dayton, Ohio. I had majored in math and science and those kinds of things when I went to Western, and so that's what they needed. And so I entered the graduate program for laser physics, and I became an engineer. And I was served as a directed duty assignment for 4 years, and then went to intermediate service school, and then I went to RAF Lake and Heath in England. Family went with me, and initially we went for a 3-year tour. We extended to a 4-year tour, and then I was selected to be the commander of the 493rd Fighter Squadron, so we extended for another 2 years so that I could complete that tour. It was while I was the commander of the 493rd that the United States Air Force attacked Libya. Now, President Reagan, during his campaign run up for the election, he had campaigned on the promise that if there was ever an American hurt, killed by a terrorist attack, and he could prove without a shadow of a doubt who it was responsible for that, he would retaliate. Remember, this was the days before 9/11, so there were no terrorist attacks that took place anywhere in the United States. So most of our population didn't worry about that, but all around the rest of the world, these terrorist attacks were taking place. Never could pin it on exactly who it was that did it while he was the president. However, on the 5th of April of 1986, there was a bomb went off in a nightclub in Germany, and they were able to determine that it was Libyan caused, Libyan sponsored. And so on the 14th of April, of 1986. I was in an F-111F loaded down with 4 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs, and I took off from RAF Lakenheath. If we had been able to fly across France, it would have taken 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours, I would have been back on the ground drinking a beer. But we couldn't get approval to fly across France. So we launched 24 F-111s and 19 KC-10s and 10 KC-135s. That's how many tankers it took us to fly this armada down the Atlantic, off the coast of France, Spain, through the Straits of Gibraltar, into the Mediterranean. Every airplane had to take off and land from the UK because nobody else would support the raid. And so down we went with 18 primary attack aircraft, support airplanes, EF-111s for jamming support, the Navy, and we were attacking 3 different targets in and around Tripoli, the capital. The Navy at the same time was striking 2 targets over in Benghazi area, the eastern part of Libya, near Egypt. But all of our attacks were in and around the capital, and went to a tanker drop-off point in the upper part of the Med, dropped off from the tanker, descended down. This airplane has what's called automatic terrain following radar. You tell the airplane how high you want to fly, 2, 3, 4, 5, 750, 1,000 feet, and you dial that in and set the airplane to say automatic, and down it goes. And it will level off out over the Mediterranean, down at initially 1,000 feet to make sure everything's working okay, and then you start stepping it down. And as you get closer to the Libyan coast, while you step it down even further to stay below the radar line of sight, and then attacked using what was called a pave-tack toss maneuver. About 25,000 feet from your target, you pull the nose up and you toss the bombs. In the weapons bay of the F-111F, there is something called a pave-tack pod, and the navigator sitting in the right seat would rotate it out, and he's looking through a flare, forward-looking infrared, and the picture that he sees in front of him looks just like a TV. It's at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, it looked just like you were looking through a TV. And so he finds the target, the bombs are airborne, I roll the airplane up to about 130 degrees of bank, pull the nose back down level with the horizon and roll out, and now I'm going away from the target. And he's looking through his pave-tack pod, 10 seconds time to impact. He fires a laser, and seekers on the nose of the bomb sees this spot on the ground, and they guide the bomb to that spot. That's how a laser-guided bomb works. We still fly versions of those bombs today in the Air Force. Very, very accurate. And so he's lasing, the bomb's impact. He says bomb impact. Now we drop the airplane back down to 200 feet to get out of the way of all of the ground fire and stuff, and head back north out over the water, and get out over the water, and get away from the Libyan coast, and then we start our climb. We climb back up to the tanker, about an hour north to get to the tanker, and as soon as you get there, you plug in and start taking fuel. This airplane has in-flight capability to refuel, air-to-air refueling. I hooked up, refueled 11 times that night. That doesn't mean that I had to take fuel that much to get down there and back. We always had to keep enough fuel in our airplanes to get either to Lakenheath, back to Lakenheath, or when we no longer could get back to Lakenheath with a full load of fuel, then we were going to go to Sigonella in Italy if something happened. So those are the only 2 places that we could land. So we had to keep enough fuel in the airplane to do that. That's why I hooked up and refueled so many times. But anyway, after the attack, get to the tanker, he starts pumping fuel. And he pumped fuel till the number 2 man on our tanker shows up. I got out of the way. He plugs in. He starts taking fuel until number 3 gets there. He comes out. Number 3 gets in there. And he takes a lot of fuel. And then he gets out of the way. I get back in there, fill up my airplane. Number 2 gets in there, fills up his airplane. Number 3 gets in there, fills up his airplane. That's the way all of the tankers and the fighters went after they got back to their tankers that night. We lost an airplane. I saw him hit the water. We don't know to this day what happened to him. All I know is I was coasting out, heart rate's coming back down out over the water, and I looked out at about my 10 o'clock position, and I saw what I knew to be an airplane hit the water, because it was a stream of burning fuel, just like napalm that I had seen when I served in Southeast Asia. And I said to my right seater, I said, "Gurney, somebody just hit the water." Didn't know who it was. But when we got back to the tankers, everybody checked in on the radio, did a radio call, and we realized that it was Carmen 5-2 that didn't make it. So we waited around a little while, hoping against hope that he would come back, but he never did. So we left and came back to Lakenheath. When I launched with the rest of the airplanes, and we were going down the coast while the sun was setting in the west, because I told you I'd taken off about 6 o'clock Lakenheath time, and when we came back up the coast while the sun was rising in the east, so we'd flown all night. Most airplanes, most guys logged about 14 hours or just shy of that. So it was a long time to be strapped in an airplane. The cockpit's smaller, or about the size of a Corvette. You can't pull over and get gas. You can't pull over and use the bathroom. You can't pull over and get something to eat. So it was a real problem. But we made it, and everybody landed back at Lakenheath the next morning. Lost that crew. Like I say, we never know what happened to them. One of the guys, the left seater, Fernando Ribas Dominici, his body washed up on shore, and after a couple of years, while the Libyans released his body to the International Red Cross, and then they released it to the American Red Cross, who came back, and they were able to do autopsy and determine which crew member it was, and it was from Puerto Rico. He's buried there in Puerto Rico, and if you go fly into Puerto Rico today, why you land at the Fernando Ribas Dominici International Airport. This F-111, big airplane, very fast. That's why the nose is so long, because it has a huge attack radar antenna here right here at the firewall, at the structure, and the radome is about this tall, and the airplane is very fast, and to make it streamlined, it has to have a long nose. That's why the nose is so long on it. There's nothing in here, it's all hollow. It's just starts right here. The rest of it is just radome. You sit side by side in the F-111. It carries so much fuel. There's two ways to put more fuel on an airplane. One is to make it longer, the other way is to make it wider. And so we couldn't make it any longer. They didn't want to make it any longer, so they made it wider, and that's why you sit side by side rather than front to back, as in most other fighter type aircraft. While she's screaming back here, if you'll notice, the wings on the airplane are back at 72.5 degrees. For two reasons. One is we restored the airplane over at the airport and had to tow her over here in the middle of the night down the roads. And so with the wings at 72, that's the only way we could get her over here. The wings on the airplane move for takeoff and landing while you move the wings out straight, put the flaps and slats down, and it takes off very quickly. But then you raise the gear flaps and slats after takeoff, and then you can start sweeping the wings back. And they're as far back, like I say, at 72.5 degrees, most aft position. These are pylons. These are what's called pivoting pylons. As the wing swings forward, they stay streamlined, and this is what we hung 2,000-pound laser guided bomb. 4 pylons, 2 on each wing, and each pylon held a 2,000-pound laser guided bomb. We had other airplanes that we attacked that night. They didn't carry laser guided bombs. They carried what we call dumb bombs, 500-pounders, and they put 6 on. They carried 12 bombs that night, so they put them on special racks that they could hang more than 1 bomb.